This movie begins by showing the protagonist named Richie, a middle-aged man who is a retired mafia boss engaged in shooting practice. He is a British citizen who lives in Spain to spend his retirement from the mafia there. He demonstrates his wealth through the house he lives in. That afternoon, Richie, along with his daughter Carmen, is having lunch. During the meal, he reveals to her that he misses his older brother Charlie, who lives in England. At that moment, we see Charlie receiving a phone call from Richie in Spain. Through the call, it becomes clear that they wish to reunite and be together as before. After the call, Charlie meets with his friends. At that moment, a friend of Richie's named Lizzie approaches Charlie to ask for Richie's phone number because she has been interested in him for a long time. After chatting, Charlie is persuaded by Lizzie and gives her his phone number. Elsewhere, Aaron and his girlfriend Lauren are taking a walk through the lonely streets of London. It is worth noting that Aaron is the leader of a gang, and it turns out that he tries to trap his girlfriend Lauren by taking her to a group of gangsters in a narrow alley. There, the gang members decide to harass her while recording what they are doing. At that moment, one of the men named Din tries to prevent his friends from harassing Lauren, but Aaron stops him until Charlie arrives at the scene. After fleeing from a commotion behind the bar, Charlie realizes what they are doing to Lauren, so he asks her to leave while he talks with the group. However, the group insults Charlie, prompting him to hit one of the men. Aaron becomes angry at what Charlie did and orders his gang to beat him to death. Shortly after, upon leaving the bar, Lizzie goes to look for Charlie, but is shocked to find him dead in an alley near the bar. Immediately, Lizzie decides to report what happened to two detectives named Susan and her partner John. Unfortunately, the detectives cannot arrest Aaron and his gang due to lack of evidence, since she did not witness the act firsthand, but only saw the group leaving the alley where she found her friend. Soon after, Richie learns of his brother's death. Devastated by the news, he plans to return to England. The scene continues with police detectives Susan and John approaching Aaron and his gang, threatening them with prison if they are found guilty of Charlie's murder. However, Aaron denies the accusations and opts to leave. After the two detectives depart, he instructs his friends to silence anyone who witnessed what happened. Anticipating the plan, Dean secretly goes to her house and tells her that Aaron has indeed threatened her, so they must remain indoors for her safety. After that, Aaron and several members of the gang arrive at Lauren's house to threaten her through the mail slot. The gang warns her to keep silent about what happened, saying that if she speaks, both she and her mother will die elsewhere. Elsewhere, Richie arrives in England and immediately meets Roy, one of his own. Richie decides to visit Lizzie to inquire about what happened to Charlie. She informs him that she did not witness the incident firsthand. However, she believes that the culprits will be mobsters who used to cause trouble in London. After that, Richie and Roy survey the crime scene where Charlie was murdered. There, they meet detectives Susan and John, who are investigating the incident. Knowing that Richie was once the most respected mafia boss, Susan asks him to hand the case over to the police. Although he initially refuses, he finally agrees to turn the case over in front of them before leaving the scene. Then Lizzie reveals to Richie that she found a video of Aaron and his gang harassing her. She believes the video is connected with Charlie's death. Lizzie also mentions that she knows the girl involved, and she gives Richie her work address. After that, Richie interrogates Lauren about what happened to his dear brother. Feeling indebted to Charlie, Lauren recounts the details of the incident, telling Richie that the mastermind behind Charlie's murder is the local gang led by Aaron. However, both are observed by DJ, a girl who is a member of Aaron's gang. Shortly after, DJ returns to the gang's hideout and tells Aaron that Lauren had mentioned the incident to a man named Richie. Aaron relaxes, thinking that Richie is just an ordinary middle-aged man. Later, Richie's former mafia colleagues gather at Charlie's funeral, where an old man named Arthur appears. Shortly after, Richie jokes with the old man, telling him that he is too old to be with them, a remark that annoys Arthur. Arthur defends himself from the joke, which makes everyone laugh. Afterward, Richie thanks him because his friends have now gathered. Then Richie meets Jack, a former police commissioner who lives in a modest house. Richie asks for Jack's help in finding information about Aaron and his gang, offering him some luxuries to enjoy his retirement. Days later, Jack provides information about some members of the gang. Unfortunately, he finds no information about Aaron, the leader of the group. Based on this, Richie instructs his friends to kidnap two members of the gang, Leroy, and Eve. When they realize that the abductors are a group of elderly men, Leroy and Eve ignore Richie's questions and instead insult and threaten him and his friends. Seeing this, Richie and his men laugh because the two young men are unaware of their past identities. Upon hearing that his brother was being insulted, Richie begins to lose his patience. Following Richie's orders, Roy immediately takes out nails and a hammer without hesitation. Roy drives a nail through Ed's hand, then takes out a drill and starts drilling Ed's feet. Ed panics upon seeing his friend being tortured, not wanting to be next. Because of this, he offers to help Richie, saying he will get Aaron out of his hideout. Although Richie's friends are skeptical, Richie accepts the offer and releases him. Once free, Leroy grabs a weapon to shoot Richie, but before he can, Richie kills him with a shot. Later, when they try to interrogate Ed, they realize that he has died from the torture. Elsewhere, Aaron grows angry over the disappearance of two of his members, believing they were attacked by his enemies. The next day, Richie returns with Lauren to help her find the rest of the gang. She tells him that one of the members, called JB, is usually found in a parking lot. Richie decides to ask for his phone number, but they are interrupted by Detective Susan, who turns out to be Lauren's mother, so she asks Richie not to involve her daughter. Sometime later in the parking lot, Jay sees Arthur alone, thinking he is a weak man, and attempts to intimidate him. But when Arthur pulls out a sword, Jaime tries to flee on his bicycle. Before he realizes it, an oncoming vehicle stops in front of him, causing him to fall into it. All of this is due to a trap that Richie had set, and it works perfectly. JB is then kidnapped and tortured by Richie and his friends in an abandoned building. Richie asks him about Aaron's whereabouts. Unfortunately, JB refuses to divulge any information about Aaron or his gang, and even mocks Charlie, saying he looked like a fool when he was beaten. Upon hearing this, Richie becomes furious and beats JB to death. Unfortunately, his furious state causes his illness to flare up again, forcing him to be hospitalized. Richie devises a plan to bring Aaron in a few days. Aaron and his gang arm themselves to face attacks from enemy gangs. However, Lauren appears to meet with him. She tells Aaron that all the missing members of his gang have been kidnapped and murdered by Richie, and she also informs him that she was in the hospital. After that, Aaron and his gang go to the hospital with Lauren as a hostage. There, Aaron orders everyone to disperse in search of his enemy's room. Shortly after, DJ and another man find Richie's room and shoot at the bed, thinking he would be lying there. However, Richie and his friends appear behind them and open fire. Aaron hears the gunshots and immediately realizes that Richie has discovered his plan. He also realizes that Lauren and Richie had planned to ambush him and his gang, knowing that Lauren had set a trap for him. Enraged, Aaron plans to kill her. Fortunately, Din arrives to help her. After that, a fierce shootout erupts between Richie's group and Aaron's gang. Lauren, realizing that everything has gotten out of control, decides to call her mother to come to the hospital. Meanwhile, Richie's group manages to kill one of Aaron's gang members. Unfortunately, Roy is shot in the process, so Richie tends to his wound shortly afterward. Meanwhile, Din tries to get her away from the scene to save her, but Aaron discovers him and takes her as a hostage to force Richie into confrontation. Afterwards, Richie and his friends face off against Aaron to save Lauren. Fortunately, Tina appears behind Aaron and manages to foil his plan by causing his weapon to rebound toward Richie. Seizing his opportunity, Richie grabs the weapon, though he struggles to load the bullets. At that moment, Aaron steps in front of him, pointing another weapon at him. However, Aaron runs out of ammunition and cannot kill Richie. At the same time, Susan and several police officers arrive on the scene, shooting Aaron for endangering Richie's life. After the incident, Richie rests in the hospital, where Susan visits him to thank him for having saved her daughter. A few days later, Richie throws a big party at the venue. At the party, Lizzie and Richie meet. Lizzie approaches him, revealing her interest in him, but when he asks her to stay in Spain, she refuses because she does not want to leave England. Shortly after, Richie's friends are very saddened, thinking he will return to Spain after avenging Charlie's death. But then, unexpectedly, Richie appears behind them and reveals that he has decided to stay in England to live with them. In the end, Richie and his group decide to overthrow crime in London as a form of atonement for their past sins.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.